I've yet to find historical evidence of any, even pre-prohibition. I'm sure there was people moonshining and stuff, but most of the whiskey even that was being drunk in Texas back in those days was coming from Kentucky and Tennessee and other places. So it seems like a big, weird historical anomaly. Like surely Texas had a ton of whiskey back in the day, but it really didn't. Or it wasn't making any here. You know, rum and rye, kind of colonial 13 colony era. And then we've got modern era, we've got Kentucky and Tennessee, you know. Now in hindsight, 15 years later, it does feel super cool to like, at the time, being on the ground level of a new relevant whiskey region, we were not very aware of it at the moment. And now it's like this thing that like, I wish we had been more aware of it then, how important that was and what was actually happening, but there's no way to know where things are gonna go. But yeah, it's pretty cool. It's not a lot of times in your life that getting to be a part of something that literally doesn't exist and getting to help get that off the ground and rolling. Like how many times is that gonna happen in someone's lifetime? That's a rare gift. It's pretty cool. There were days where I still went back to the old building and I was finishing. We had low lines already, you know, the first distillation already done. We had stuff in tank. And so some of the last distillations that were done down there wasn't the normal hustle and bustle of 11 people in the building. You know, it was like a 3,000 square foot building, pretty small. But when that was our base of operations, it was kind of a hornet's nest. I mean, there's people everywhere. There's hoses on the ground. There's barrels under your desk. But those last few ones ended up in my memory. They're pretty special moments because I literally was just down there all day. Only person in the building, knowing these are kind of the last runs with these stills and in this space. Those few days, I think it was like 3 or 4 days, just those last couple weeks before we started here. I didn't think I was going to miss it until those days, and then it kind of hit me that like, you know, this is the end of a whole chapter, and it was a lot more work to operate. It was a lot more time and labor intensive to do it that way and at that scale. But in some ways, it was a lot more intimate because of that. If I was doing a spirit run, I'd pretty much camp out. I'd take my laptop up on the platform, right there by the condensers and the spirit safe where the liquid's coming out, tasting things, smelling things, adjusting flame, because those were all direct fire. There was a lot more inconsistency and variability. They were tricky to run. They were kind of finicky, but they were ours and we knew them well. And you could kind of just be by yourself all day. I put music on and maybe I'd do some spreadsheets or pay the feds taxes or whatever else I had to do. But you kind of had to camp out or you could miss something. And both with the equipment and the liquid coming off, just by necessity, that's how it was. That's a pretty sweet time. I actually think about people that have joined us since. A lot of stuff about that place wasn't super safe. It wasn't made the best way maybe, but it was ours, you know? Every once in a while I have to remind myself, someone that's only worked for us since we've been here, what this used to be that isn't really in there. You know, it's not part of their personal history. That there's kind of this duct tape and bootstrap version of, every once in a while it just hits me how special that time was, for sure. We made this massive stainless steel paddle. We had an old wooden, more traditional European wooden mash paddle. We broke it. We're like, we need to make one out of metal, so we welded a big stainless one. You know, 500-gallon fermenters. You do a corn cook and you pump it over, and while you're getting it to cool off and you're putting enzymes and you're putting yeast in, somebody's got to stir that. There's no motor with the impeller on it. And those are the kind of things that I think seem super quaint to a whiskey drinker and fan when they walk in and see, wow, that thing is being stirred by a person. But I guarantee you, nobody that ever used to have to do that, this is doing it. Although we didn't have to go to the gym, work was enough, you know? And so there's a few things like that I don't miss. I think on the creative side, the nicest thing about having a higher volume and even using steam as opposed to direct fire is really predictability and consistency. So down there, if we had a weird idea that we wanted to try, you know, one fermentation is only going to give us, one fermentation would give us 1 barrel eventually. So you distill it once, distill a second time, we end up with 1 53-gallon barrel basically. Which means to do anything in triplicate, to get actual research off of any idea, is literally impossible. Every barrel is different. There's no way to consolidate 3 fermentations and then run 3 barrels that are homogeneous. They're all their own thing. And so if we were doing a proofing experiment or trying out a different toast or anything like that, you weren't always sure if there was apples to apples, right? Down here, immediately, it was like, man, we can save up a couple of days runs. Now we've got like 40 or 50 barrels that are all exactly the same liquid. We can do proofing experiments. We can put things in different parts of the warehouse and track them and actually have usable information on if we want to tweak something like a little fruitier or change the mouthfeel or whatever it is that we're trying to like tweak a product. We could do things that actually yielded results that we could trust, you know? So that was one of the first big benefits that I realized is tracking kind of the innovation and R&D side of what we do, which is a big part of what we do, was not just anecdotal. It was actual real, like, this is real information. It's replicable. We did it in at least triplicate, if not more. So some of those things, that was a little bit of a surprise. I think there's going bigger, even as a maker, sometimes I think you assume this is going to kind of get kind of homogenized and more boring and more just like consistent. But we found that it actually allowed us to be more intentional about the diversity, and our play became a little bit more purposeful and less harebrained, you know. Back at the old building, if we did something weird and we liked it, then we did it again a year or two later and it wasn't the same, and we didn't know, like, it just wasn't controllable enough to know what that meant or why it happened. But down here, that's a lot easier to track, which is fun.